Welcome back to SBC Media. My name is George Priestman, reporting for SBC Media today, and I am joined by the CEO and co-founder of MadeYou, Luke Todd, to discuss the company's professional development courses and how they can add value to iGaming operators and suppliers. Just before we start, since we are discussing the impact of well-being in business among many other things, what's one way you'd like to switch off?
One way I'd like to switch off is I do enjoy playing squash, and I also enjoy going to the gym. It's probably a more switch on than switch off, but I do find that the exercise kind of dulls the brain a little bit, ready for whatever's coming.
Totally agree. Exercise and a healthy dose of very good films is my cocktail. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not much on Netflix these days, so.
I just would love for you to start us off with a overview of who and what MadeYou is.
So, overview of MadeYou, we are probably best described as a leadership development organization. We're specializing in leadership and management training, leadership and management coaching, and we also do additional services to support people development and growth with an ultimate aim of impacting the ROI and the business metrics. So things like leadership development programs, 360 feedback, calibration exercises, employer branding, all those people development services.
It's a great overview. Let's get a little bit more detailed, though, as we go on here. Just the iGaming industry is known for its fast-paced and high employee turnover. How can MadeYou's emphasis on building a strengths-based culture and investing in employee development directly look to combat these high churn rates that are really prevalent in the iGaming sector?
So definitely high churn rates is an issue in this sector. There's a lot of movement within different companies. I think for a starting point, the employer branding strategy is fundamental. What are those little nuances that makes each different business very unique, and also speaking to the people who actually would align best with that culture? There's a lot of flitting jobs going on until people find their kind of suitable place within the industry and which company that they're going to get what they need out of it. I think an effective employer branding strategy would definitely support with that, giving a little more visibility so that people are drawn to the right organization quicker rather than having to jump from job to job to job. And I also think specifically in this industry, there's so much growth going on within the industry that people are becoming managers very quickly without the exposure of developing those management skills. And then obviously, because of a result of continued growth, those people who have become a manager and haven't developed those skills might become a leader within a few months. And I think where MadeYou can really support, not just with the employer branding on churn, but also supporting those people through their growth process, where they haven't normally got the tenure to build up the skill set and build up the knowledge of what makes a great manager, what makes a great leader, and what are the differences between the two. We can support on that through training and also coaching and the development programs.
What specific metrics should iGaming companies track to prove the ROI of their people development initiatives?
This is an interesting one, George, because a lot of the people development initiatives that come through iGaming are coming through the HR function. They're the ones actually sponsoring the people development. And typically HR are drawn more to their ROI metrics, which is obviously reducing churn, increasing employee engagement. This is very hard to translate back to senior leaders who are going to be signing off any people development initiatives. Obviously, churn has a direct relationship to costs, employer engagement as well. Employee engagement has a direct relationship to costs and also well-being and motivation, which obviously has an indirect link to other ROI business metrics. But fundamentally, any people development initiative, whether it's coaching, whether it's development programs, or whether it's training, should be linked back to the core business metric of that manager and that leader, because typically you would be expecting an increase in those metrics by having those people development. So obviously, if I'm a better manager or I'm a better leader and I'm in a sales channel, for instance, I'm in a commercial department, then you would be naturally expecting there to be an increase in revenues coming into the business, an increase in commercials. If I'm in financial, you would be looking to see reductions in costs, increases in efficiencies. So one of the things that we can fundamentally build out in ROI of people development initiatives is using the HR core metrics to produce ROI, but also adding in where are these leaders and managers coming from, which department, and what metrics are we hoping to change within those departments that would ultimately impact the business directly through revenue, costs, and profit.
And moving on to just another interesting question with just how does MadeYou's leadership development and coaching methodology adapt to the fully remote, multi-jurisdictional environment? And what role does fun and quirky learning play in fostering connection and communication among distributed iGaming teams?
With COVID coming, obviously everyone went remote, and it took us about 6 weeks to pivot into how do we still be quirky and fun, but in an online setting for those training courses. And we think we've found the balance. One of the reasons that we want fun and quirky in our training courses and our development programs and also our team building days is because it installs a deeper level of learning. People are much more receptive to new information when they're actually having fun while getting it. And there's nothing worse than being in any of these kind of people development services where it's so dull that you're basically falling asleep, because if that's the case, you're not getting the informative stuff. So we fundamentally put a lot of work into even transitioning fun and quirky into those elements remote. And across different time zones, we operate. We're obviously based in Malta and the UK, but we are servicing clients in Asia. We're servicing clients in North America. We've even got some clients in South America as well. So we're able to adopt to different time zones and deliver what needs to be happening there. From a coaching point of view, it's very interesting because remote, what we found during COVID is a lot of people went to coaching online instead of coaching in person. And fundamentally, we saw that people are much more likely to be a lot more vulnerable and transparent in an online setting when it's kind of just remote. So it allowed us to really work a lot deeper with their development areas and their development focus and support them through that transition in a remote setting as well. Multi-jurisdiction, I think one of the interesting things on this one is because we're a leadership and management development organization, we get exposed to a lot of information about the iGaming sector. But obviously, every interaction we're having is confidential, but we internally understand the nuances of different jurisdictions, different licensing agreements, different compliance issues. And that is fundamentally one of the things that makes us one of the key suppliers within this industry, because we already understand all of the nuances that individuals are going to be experiencing and how we can help them navigate those as well.
Yeah, I won't make it a follow-up question, just a kind of follow-up comment really, just on this COVID made everyone kind of look at businesses differently with the remote aspect. So I'm sure that has had a huge bearing on how you've moved forward. And I guess giving you ideas of how the business could have gone online and still be really successful as well and be able to adapt to it. And clearly it's proved dividends for the company. So, but yeah, just coming on to the last few questions here, this is obviously a real bread and butter question for you, I think. How can MadeYou's employer branding services help iGaming operators and suppliers to effectively communicate their unique value, proposition, and culture to prospective employees?
I think on the outside, when we're looking at the gaming sector, is there are certain nuances, but some people could judge that companies are very similar in regards to what they are. When you're talking about operators, game providers, whether it's sports or whether it's casino, we're trying to put people in the buckets. And actually, when you get into the hardcore of it, each individual business is very unique and has those unique elements. There seems to be a wave across the industry where when one organization is seeing that they are delivering different employee value propositions and they're adding in different benefits and services, and it's having value to their employees, that comes across in a way that every other company should do the same. And that's actually not true. Is what we're trying to find with MadeYou is we're delving into what makes that individual business very unique, and how do we draw on that? What are the employees valuing? What are they struggling with? I think one of the core things about any employer branding work is that we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because we're not selling polished badness. We're not selling that kind of thing where we're saying, oh, this is a great place to work and there's nothing wrong here. We're actually trying to put a proposition together that says everything that exists within a company. and understanding what the challenges are. How do we compensate for those challenges? How do we draw out the things that don't necessarily work so well? Are those going to be fundamentally part of the business going forward? Or are those things that the leaders are looking to change? And if so, what's the timelines on that? What are the good elements about working there? And then how can we tailor the value proposition around those specifics about that unique business? And values as well is quite interesting. Culture and values is they can be similar, but actually what's going to draw people out, what's actually making you unique. There's things like, is we can have honesty as one of our values, but typically is every business should fundamentally have honesty as an underlying thing. That's honesty and transparency is there. So if we already understand that that's a baseline, what are the core values that makes us different? What's on top? What makes us us? And then how do we proposition that outside?
Yeah, I mean, you got everything out there. That was a very good answer to a very good question. But I just want to look a little bit more at the long-term sort of vision now and the effects of MadeYou. So, like, how does the development and coaching side really help iGaming professionals future-proof their careers and acquire those soft skills that are necessary to transition into managing, in the future and leading future innovation?
I think one of the core differences with MadeYou, George, than potentially not all coaching companies, but some other people development companies, is that the people who actually are doing the coaching are not only the same people who would do the training courses if there was training involved, but all of us have actually come from a business background. So we've done operational work at senior leadership positions before transitioning into coaching and training. We've done the real job as it was. And so I think fundamentally this makes it very different if we're working, let's say, one-on-one in a coaching environment with a person, because we can bring in those elements of the training in that one-on-one scenario because we know what the training courses are, we know what the learning is, and we know that this particular learning would be valuable for that person. So we can bring it into the session in the moment and help them through there. And then I think one of the other things that really works well for us is that sometimes as well is we need to switch away from coaching, which is very kind of open-ended questioning, and then slip into mentoring as well, using some of our own experience to say, this is actually how we've approached it in the past. With that information, what do you think you should do? And I think that mentoring approach is quite fundamental for people who are going through a leadership career progression where they haven't had the exposure to build that remit of knowledge base of what it means to be a manager, what it means to be a leader, what it means to even be a senior leader. So us giving us some of our background and some of our experiences gives them knowledge that they might not have been able to get themselves. And I think doing that in a very kind of open, confidential, safe environment allows us to really get to grips with what is holding that individual back and how do we help that individual be a better version of themselves. And when we talk about career progression, George, I think one of the fundamental problems about the way leaders look at career progression, which has fundamentally changed, is previously you're always putting investment in people's development because they want vertical growth. I want to be the next team lead. I want to be the next manager. I want head of, director of, C-level. But actually a lot of people nowadays are still wanting growth, but they're wanting horizontal. I enjoy designing, so I don't want to be a design team lead. I want to learn more about design, what models are out there. I love being a developer. I don't want to be a dev lead. I want to learn more about new coding, new platforms. So horizontal growth is also a form of career progression, not just vertical. So getting to grips with in a coaching environment, what is that individual looking for? Are they looking for the vertical? Are they looking for the horizontal? And then how do we supplement them with the knowledge to support them to develop themselves in the right way? And I think once they've got that kind of clear in their mindset, that's when we can really get to grips with developing them into be better versions of themselves.
And just on to the final question, which is the one that I was probably the most interested about, with the constant pressures of regulatory changes, technological demands, the 24/7 operational cycle, mental well-being is obviously a growing concern in the iGaming industry. So how does MadeYou's well-being coaching package specifically address the unique stresses and the burnout risks that are faced by these professionals in iGaming? And the second sort of sub-question for it, and I guess is probably the sort of overriding point of the company, how can companies use that package to build a more resilient and sustainable workforce?
I think one of the things about well-being is really understanding that it's very unique to the individual. So terms like work-life balance are so subjective because what's balanced for one person is not balanced for another. So even if somebody's working longer hours, just saying to them, oh, you've got the wrong work-life balance, you need to reset it, might not actually be the correct thing. So I think what we do in well-being is we're fundamentally understanding is where is somebody sat in regards to their well-being level. Are they feeling pressure? Are they feeling stress? Or is it tipping over to burnout? What are the triggers that are actually either taking them over that level or getting close to that level? And then fundamentally, what processes need to be put in place or they can drive to put in place to kind of just bring that well-being back into focus. Now, sometimes, and because we're working on one-on-one, sometimes that might be what's happening in the workplace. The ability to say no, the ability to delegate more and empower the team, because when you're actually got so much control, you're basically creating a culture of dependency on you, which means you're overloaded. So it might be about empowering the people below you or delegating. It might be actually reprioritizing a few things and getting the priorities correct. Or it might be things outside of work. It might be, how do I actually get a different balance going on? Like the question you asked me at the beginning is, what kind of helps me switch off or get me in the right focus is some people are so ingrained in the work kind of hamster wheel that they haven't even thought about what else do they have going on outside of work. And when you haven't got that light and shade going on, it means that one side becomes so overwhelming that you just don't have any comparison on how to offset that. So the well-being side is understanding what needs to be put in place to create a greater sense of well-being in work, but also what do they need to be putting in place in their own personal time to create that light and shade moment so that they've got something to offset what's actually being challenging at work. And that can cover everything from a work point of view is, are they in the right job? Have they just progressed within their career and actually now they've progressed to a point where they don't particularly want to be there because they want to step back a bit? Is it the case of they actually want to go on further and they're taking on too much because they're pushing their career at high velocity? There's so much that's a nuance in there. And I think one of the things that we do in wellbeing is we have such a wealth of knowledge, both from how to reset wellbeing in your personal life and how to reset wellbeing in professional life. It's really about understanding what's going on for the individual and how do we support the individual.
Thank you so much for your time. And just final word.
Yeah, that was a really good interview. Thank you, George. It allowed me to kind of get some real core topics across, including the well-being and the employer branding. So thanks very much for taking me through that.